Imagine a desert so vast its sandstorms could be seen from space, choking cities over 1,000 miles away. This was the reality for northern China, where the relentless expansion of the Taklamakan and Gobi deserts created an existential crisis. These two deserts, covering a combined 1.6 million square kilometers, were growing at an alarming rate. Each year, an area of grassland larger than a major city, some 3,600 square kilometers, vanished beneath the advancing sands. Simultaneously, ferocious winds were stripping away another 2,000 square kilometers of precious topsoil, turning fertile land into barren wasteland. The root of this aridity was a colossal geological feature: the Himalayas. This massive mountain range creates a profound rain shadow, blocking moisture from the Indian Ocean and leaving northern China with a mere 100 to 250 millimeters of annual rainfall, a fraction of what falls in the country's southern regions. The consequence was a creeping disaster. Dust storms born in these deserts would sweep eastward, carrying billions of tons of particulate matter that blanketed cities like Beijing, combining with industrial pollution to create hazardous air quality. For the people living on the front lines, it was a daily battle against an encroaching enemy that threatened agriculture, settlements, and ultimately their way of life. The desert wasn't just expanding, it was actively swallowing the nation. Faced with this escalating threat, China launched one of the most ambitious ecological engineering projects in human history in 1978, the 3 North Shelter Belt Forest Program. This was not a short-term fix but a generational commitment. A 72-year timeline stretching to 2050, the vision was audacious in its scale: to construct a living barrier stretching 4,500 kilometers long, weaving through the nation's northwest, north, and northeast regions. The goal was to plant 100 billion trees across 88 million acres, an area larger than many countries. But this wasn't conceived as a single continuous wall of trees that would be ecologically simplistic and vulnerable. Instead, planners designed a strategic mosaic of forest strips and patches, functioning as interconnected windbreaks to disrupt and dissipate the energy of sandstorms. The program had dual objectives: to halt the desertification that was consuming farmland and villages, and to create a sustainable timber resource for local populations. This modern endeavor actually had historical precedents. For centuries, Chinese dynasties had planted trees for military fortification along frontiers. But the 3 North program was different. It was a comprehensive, scientifically informed attempt to reshape the very climate and geography of a region. The ambition was to increase forest coverage in northern China from a meager 5% to 15%, fundamentally altering the landscape not for a decade, but for centuries to come. It was a declaration of war against the desert, fought not with weapons, but with roots and leaves. Before a single tree could be planted, engineers had to win a fundamental battle: stabilizing the mobile sand dunes themselves. The first line of defense was deceptively low-tech, but remarkably effective: the straw checkerboard barrier. This technique involved pressing straw directly into the sand in a grid-like pattern, each square typically 1 meter by 1 meter. These simple barriers perform a critical function. They break the wind at ground level, preventing it from lifting and carrying sand particles. By creating millions of these small, stable cells across the dunes, engineers could essentially freeze the desert in place. The next step involved contouring the landscape itself. Bulldozers would reshape the dunes, lowering their peaks and smoothing their slopes to make them more resistant to wind erosion. In parallel, another strategy was deployed: the strategic placement of gravel. By covering large areas with a layer of small stones, workers encouraged the formation of a biological soil crust. This crust, composed of cyanobacteria, lichens, and mosses, acts as a natural glue, binding the sand particles together and creating a foundation for future plant life. Of course, none of this was possible without water. The initial phases relied on large-scale diversion projects to bring life-giving irrigation to the parched front line. Canals and pipelines stretched into the desert, providing the moisture needed to give the first pioneering plants a fighting chance. Yet these purely mechanical and hydraulic solutions had their limits. They were labor-intensive, expensive to maintain across such vast territories, and ultimately, they were just the preparation for the main event. They created the stable stage, but the real stars of the show, the trees and shrubs, had yet to make their entrance. The success of the entire Green Wall would depend on choosing the right biological soldiers for an incredibly harsh environment. The initial biological strategy was one of speed and scale. Fast-growing species like poplar and willow were planted in vast monoculture plantations, chosen for their ability to establish a visible green cover quickly. This approach yielded rapid results, but it came with a catastrophic vulnerability. The lack of genetic diversity created a perfect storm for disease. In a stark lesson from Ningxia province, a single pathogen wiped out approximately 1 billion poplar trees, erasing 2 decades of planting efforts in one blow. This disaster forced a fundamental scientific pivot. The program shifted its focus from sheer growth speed to ecological resilience, turning to drought-resistant native shrubs and grasses better adapted to the arid environment. This change in strategy was significantly bolstered by a major intervention from the World Bank, which provided $80 million specifically to promote indigenous plant diversity. The new approach was about creating a complex ecosystem, not just a tree farm. Scientists began intensive genetic research to identify and cultivate hyper-arid, adapted species that could thrive with minimal water. The goal was to build a self-sustaining biological community where deep-rooted shrubs would stabilize the soil, hardy grasses would create ground cover, and a carefully selected mix of trees would form a canopy, all working in synergy. This wasn't just about planting trees, it was about engineering a functioning ecosystem from the ground up, one that could withstand the pressures of disease, pests, and a changing climate. The selection of each plant species became a critical engineering decision, balancing water needs, root depth, and resilience to create a living barrier that could endure for generations. As the biological front advanced, technology became the program's central nervous system. Satellite monitoring, using the Normalized Difference Vegetation Index, or NDVI, allowed for precise tracking of vegetation health and growth across millions of hectares. This data provided an objective measure of success far beyond simple tree counts. But reaching the most remote and challenging areas required a new tool: drones. Unmanned aerial vehicles were deployed for large-scale seeding operations, flying over terrain inaccessible to ground crews and dispersing seeds with unprecedented efficiency. On the ground, water management underwent a revolution with the widespread adoption of drip irrigation systems. These networks of plastic tubes deliver water directly to the root zones of plants, minimizing evaporation and reducing water consumption by up to 60% compared to traditional flood irrigation. This was critical in a region where every drop of water was a precious resource. An even more innovative model emerged: the integration of solar power with agriculture. Vast arrays of photovoltaic panels were erected not just for energy generation, but to provide shade for crops and shrubs growing beneath them. The panels reduce ground-level wind speed and evaporation, creating a more hospitable microclimate for plant growth while powering the irrigation systems. This synergy between energy and ecology represents a new frontier in desert management. Furthermore, artificial intelligence began to play a role. AI-powered systems now analyze soil composition, climate data, and satellite imagery to recommend the most suitable plant species for any given location, optimizing survival rates. Intelligent water management systems prevent the overexploitation of aquifers, a critical concern in regions like Minkin, where groundwater levels had dropped dramatically. The Green Wall had evolved from a simple manual effort into a sophisticated technology-driven operation where data, robotics, and renewable energy work in concert to turn the tide against the desert. But this massive biological intervention created its own critical challenge: the water paradox. You can't grow a forest in a desert without water, yet pumping vast quantities of groundwater to sustain non-native trees risks depleting the very resource you're trying to protect. This paradox became painfully clear in places like the Minkin region, where heavy reliance on irrigation for the new forests caused groundwater tables to plummet by as much as 19 meters. The alarming realization was that, in some cases, the trees were consuming more water than they were helping to conserve through microclimate effects. This forced another major strategic shift. Instead of fighting the desert's nature, engineers began working with it. They pivoted towards planting phreatophytes, specialized plants like tamarisk and poplar that have evolved to tap deep groundwater sources with their extensive root systems, reducing the need for artificial irrigation. The approach to watering itself was redesigned to mimic the desert's own irregular patterns. Rather than constant irrigation, they implemented cyclic patterns, delivering water in infrequent but deep pulses that more closely resemble the rare, heavy downpours of a desert thunderstorm. This encourages plants to send their roots deeper into the soil in search of moisture, making them more resilient. Engineers also developed sophisticated moisture retention systems using geomembranes and specialized mulches to drastically reduce evaporation from the soil surface. The entire philosophy evolved from one of conquest to one of coexistence. The goal was no longer to create a lush, water-intensive forest where one couldn't naturally exist, but to cultivate a resilient, arid-adapted ecosystem that could sustain itself with the limited water available, turning a potential ecological disaster into a sustainable, long-term solution. So, after decades of work and billions of trees, what has been the actual result? The data reveals a story of significant, albeit complex, success. The most direct measure is the Dust Storm Intensity Index, or DSI, which combines data on a storm's duration and its impact on visibility. Research from Beijing's Geographical Sciences Institute showed that by 1999, the DSI had plummeted by 81.7% compared to 1985 levels, a decrease that lead researcher Professor Minghong Tan directly attributed to the increased vegetation cover from the Green Wall. NASA satellite data has consistently confirmed this trend, showing a clear increase in vegetation coverage across northern China, with the country contributing significantly to the global greening trend observed from space. This new growth also acts as a massive carbon sink, sequestering billions of tons of carbon dioxide. The economic transformation has been equally profound in many areas. The program successfully transitioned the economic model of the Gobi Desert region from vulnerable, subsistence farming to more resilient industries like ecological tourism, fruit cultivation, and sustainable forestry. However, the success is not without controversy or caveats. A vigorous scientific debate continues over how much of the improvement is due to the planted vegetation versus natural cyclical increases in rainfall. Critics rightly point out that the initial monoculture plantations lacked biodiversity and were ecologically fragile. In Gansu province, the deserts of the Gobi and Taklamakan are still advancing faster than the Green Wall can contain them, and in some areas, they are beginning to merge. The project also faced a fundamental ecological criticism. Was it wise to plant vast forests in a region where trees do not occur naturally? Some scientists argued that drought-resistant shrubs and grasses would have been a more ecologically appropriate and water-efficient solution. The program has adapted in response to these critiques, shifting towards native species and more diverse plantings. But the debate highlights the immense challenge of intervening in complex natural systems on such a colossal scale. The Green Wall is not a flawless victory, but a monumental experiment in ecological engineering, one that has yielded undeniable benefits while providing crucial lessons for the world. Behind these staggering statistics and technological innovations are the stories of the people who turned this blueprint into a living reality. Individuals like Yin Yuzhen became symbols of this grassroots effort. Starting with virtually nothing on the barren edges of the Muas Desert, she dedicated her life to planting trees, single-handedly transforming a desolate landscape into a thriving green oasis over decades, an effort that earned national recognition. Her story is not unique. Across the frontline regions, entire communities have undergone a profound transition. Once threatened farmers, watching their land vanish under the sand, have now become guardians of the new forests. This shift has brought unexpected economic benefits. The afforestation has enabled the cultivation of valuable medicinal plants like sandstorm, a parasitic herb that grows on the roots of desert trees like the tamarisk. This creates a sustainable income stream, directly linking ecological restoration to economic improvement. The very relationship between people and the desert has been rewritten. What was once seen as an implacable enemy to be feared is now increasingly viewed as a land of opportunity, a place where careful stewardship can yield both environmental and economic rewards. This cultural shift from a battle against nature to a partnership with it may be one of the project's most enduring legacies. So, after 46 years, what is the final verdict on China's Green Great Wall? The completed 3,000-kilometer green belt around the Taklamakan Desert stands as a monumental achievement in ecological engineering. Forest coverage in the project areas has surged from 5% to nearly 14%, and the frequency of devastating dust storms has been drastically reduced. The project offers crucial lessons for other massive initiatives, like Africa's Great Green Wall, demonstrating the importance of adapting techniques to local conditions, prioritizing native species, and integrating advanced technology. However, the work is far from over. The enduring challenge remains sustainable management, ensuring these new ecosystems can thrive long-term without depleting precious water resources. The story of the Green Great Wall is ultimately a testament to human ingenuity's capacity to confront a formidable natural force, not through domination, but through a persistent, evolving, and technologically aided dialogue with the environment. Thank you for following along with this exploration of one of humanity's most ambitious ecological projects here on Man-Made Marvels. Make sure to subscribe for more stories of human innovation on a massive scale.